Please listen carefully.
Well, good afternoon. I'm so excited to be here, this little Mississippi boy here in Virginia. I'm going to share my story as a young social entrepreneur, and we're going to start with the year of 2008. So that's me graduating from Mississippi Valley State University. I had a wonderful time the night before with my colleagues, drinking a lot of libations, talking about my career, going into corporate America, and I did that. I moved away from Mississippi. And if you know any young person around my age at this time, they're talking about probably moving away because there's lack of opportunities. They don't see themselves having a family in the place that they call home. And so I was working a very interesting corporate job, making a lot of money, not really helping a lot of people. And I said one day, what is my purpose? And I had a really amazing mentor at that time that passed away since then. And I called him at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I said, you know, something's not right. He said, yeah, I know. You need to come home. You need to come home and be the change you want to see. And I said, there's nothing in Mississippi for me. That's why I left. Why do you want me to come back? He said, I need you to carry the torch. I need you to finish what I started. And so I did that. And I took that leap of faith and moved back to Mississippi, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing what my future would hold. And I got involved with a lot of organizations, working with the public library, working with other universities, just volunteering my time. And I said, you know, I may be onto something. I have this thing for helping people. And even though that I grew up in a single-parent home, and really we didn't have a lot, but I always had this heart to give and to help others and lift people up while I climb. And so I got involved really helping, trying to understand how can we make this place, the place that I call home, Clarksdale, Mississippi, the home of the blues, better than it already is. And so I started having conversations with my peers, with my colleagues, other people that I looked up to. And they said, Tim, you're onto something. Again, I said, yeah, I just don't know what it is. Help me, guide me in the right direction. And so I started doing more and asking more questions. And that led to more opportunities. And I had the opportunity to work for the largest rural development bank in the country. And in this position, I felt kind of special because they gave me this title as Community Development Officer. I was like, cool, got a nice office. And I did a lot of great work. I was able to raise over $1 million for my community for various projects, from recycling to youth engagement to creative placemaking. And I thought that was it, like I'm going to stay here. But again, there was another calling. And I had this conversation with my mentor. And I remember it so vaguely because it was a couple of months before he passed away. He said, make sure whatever you do, that you don't forget about where you come from. And said, make sure that you care more about how you make your money than how much money you make. And so I left that job, started out trying to figure out what is this thing called social entrepreneurship? And how can I apply what I already know in business, in management, in sales, and actually do a lot of good work, but also make a living? And I remember having a conversation with my mom. She said, well, how are you going to pay the bills? You know, you can't help people all the time, and you're struggling yourself. And I said, you know, that's a really important thing to figure out. And I remember not knowing what was going to happen after I left that job. And that was March 2015. So by April, I was trying to figure out how I was going to get my first client because I said I was going to be a consultant full time. And most people said, so what does that really mean? I said, well, I'm going to work and apply my skills and make a lot of money. And they said, well, so what does that mean? And I said, well, I'm going to figure it out again. So I got my first client. It was in April. And then I had the opportunity to fly to Oakland, California with one of my colleagues and now business partners. I had $600 in my bank account. The plane ticket cost $350. I took that trip to Oakland, and I met this young man, and he said, what you're doing in the Delta is really amazing. It's special, and I want to write about it. I said, okay, cool, that's what you want to do. And I remember doing the interview, but I don't remember the publication that he was with. And so one day, September, I get all these notifications, and they're like, you're in the Huffington Post. I said, yeah, but why am I in the Huffington Post? You remember that interview, like you said? I was like, oh, yeah, that interview. And then he said, I was on a mission to transform the Mississippi Delta. Wow. Me? Not this guy. But that really solidified my purpose. And I know a lot of people ask me all the time, why Mississippi? You could be anywhere. You can be in D.C., Atlanta, all these other places. Why Mississippi? And I said, Mississippi is special. Historically, the work I'm doing, I shouldn't be doing, right? Because I should graduate, get a corporate job, clock in from 9 to 5, and listen to others tell me what to do. I shouldn't be as disruptive and have the ability to do a lot of good work when I want to do it. But that's okay. And so trying to figure out how to move forward and really solidify this whole journey of purpose, I had a lot of people contacting me after this article, and they said, so can you help me with a business plan? Can you help me with a marketing plan? Can you look at my profit and loss statements? Help me, help me, help me. And I said, can you help me, understand, how to help you? And they said, well, you got to do something more than what you're doing now. And so I started looking at all the obstacles in my community. And I said, well, rural businesses are having a very difficult time trying to survive. And I looked at the wealth disparities for Black entrepreneurs and white entrepreneurs, and I said, we have to do something about this. And you can look at these stats from the Small Business Administration as well as Prosperity Now. And I said, I want to do something about this. How can I change these obstacles and turn these into opportunities? And so I did. And so one of the opportunities that I looked at was to really kind of develop an ecosystem to support underserved entrepreneurs. These were entrepreneurs that were looked over, that had kind of mom and pop businesses really struggling to make ends meet, but they were a staple of the community. They probably cooked the best macaroni and cheese, or they had the best lasagna, or whatever the case may be. They were still staples of the community. The other thing I wanted to really kind of disrupt is how information was shared. Because again, historically, knowledge was only shared within certain groups. I wanted to change that. I wanted to share what I learned with others. And then kind of the third opportunity was how to rewrite this narrative. And I heard someone earlier talk about narrative change. How do we change the narrative about Mississippi? How do we embrace a new story? And then the final opportunity was helping families create additional wealth to improve their overall quality of life. So we started Higher Purpose Co. We provide education, business support services, access to capital, and mentorship. And since starting this 2 years ago, we've helped over 300 entrepreneurs, and that number is growing daily. But again, this didn't exist. We're the only nonprofit that's exclusively focused on entrepreneurship. I will also add that we're the only millennial-led nonprofit in the area, and we're all from the Mississippi Delta. So on this journey, I get a lot of speaking requests. I get a lot of engagements. But this opportunity here changed my life. They said, we want you to come talk to these young men in our program. They were very vague in the details on this email. And so I called and I said, I'm interested. When is the speaking engagement? Where's the location? And they told me, and I literally dropped the phone. Not out of fear, but I was so humble that they wanted me to come speak and engage with these men. And so this is a program that is started by the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, and they had been working with these men to help them develop their businesses. So hopefully, when they're released, they can actually create legitimate businesses to provide for their families. And I remember having a conversation with one of the gentlemen. He said, you're so inspiring. How old are you? And I said, I'm just 30. And he said, wow, I've been in here 32 years. And that is why I do what I do, right? To provide opportunity, to connect people to resources. And I told him to stay in touch with me, to connect with me. But it was all about providing for their families. I kept hearing it over and over again. Yes, they committed a crime, but it was because they were trying to figure out a way to provide for their families. And so this is why we do what we do. This young lady, DeAndrea, she came to us maybe about 4 months ago, interested in starting her own business. Her mom actually has an amazing story. And we worked with her on her business concept and really connecting her to getting access to capital. So we launched a partnership with Kiva about 6 months ago, and I'm excited to announce that we have funded 2 loans in the state of Mississippi. Why am I excited? Because if it wasn't for us, those loans wouldn't exist. And so we have a huge opportunity now to connect other people to access to capital. And so we helped DeAndrea secure a $1,000 loan to start her business. We also helped another young lady secure $8,000 to expand her business. And we really want to grow this. So you're probably thinking, well, Tim, entrepreneurship is not my thing, or supporting small businesses is not my thing. Well, a couple of things I've learned along the way in terms of establishing our company and working with different partners around the country, but most importantly, making sure that our work has a local impact. So whether it's housing, healthcare, education, if you're thinking about applying entrepreneurial principles to whatever venture you're thinking about, here's a couple of things I want to share. So the first thing is identify the obstacle and the opportunity. How can you reverse engineer those obstacles that you're talking about? A lot of people talk about what they don't have. My community doesn't have this. My community doesn't have that. Well, what do you have? And what's the DNA of your community? What makes your community special, unique from any other place? The second thing I would recommend is establishing trust. And when I talk about trust, it really takes a lot of self-awareness. Are you the right person to lead this initiative? Do people actually trust you? Because a lot of times, we want to be able to trust others and put a lot of responsibility on that trust with others in our community. And honestly, change will not only happen once you establish trust, but it will go much quicker and faster. The other thing is identifying unlikely partners. So in our work, we've reached across our community, across our state, across the region, across the country, to looking for partners that believe in our work. We're not territorial. We're not trying to operate in a silo. We want to be partners. We want to work with people. So think about what organization is in your community that could be excited about your project, but you haven't talked to. You haven't even introduced them to your project or your initiative. And sometimes, instead of inviting people to the table, take the table to them. Co-create. So instead of doing things to the community, do things with the community. Make sure that whatever you're trying to reach, your goals, that your target audience is with you along the process. If it's a housing project, make sure that they're there to understand how this project is going to impact them. From the colors that will be used, to the materials that will be used, to the location, if there's going to be a park or not a park. Having co-creation allows people to really understand that you care about them and strengthens that level of trust. And then every community is different. So success for my community may look different from your community. You can't be like everyone else. So define your own success and embrace it. Don't tell people what your community should be. Don't allow people to do that to you. Define your own definition of success. And this could be personal success as well as the overall success of the initiative. And then finally, thinking from a social entrepreneurship lens, I always talk about mission over margin. I see a lot of organizations mission creep. So they started off as this, and 2 years later, they're this, and the next year, they're going to be something else. And they creep away from why they originally started. And then a lot of them put margin or profit above really making a difference in their community. So yes, you should be a viable organization. You should raise money. But should you have a 6-story house and drive a Lamborghini and Porsche and Mercedes? I don't know. But should you help families get out of poverty and underserved entrepreneurs start their businesses and work across community lines and racial lines? Is that success? Is that the mission? That's up for you to decide. And finally, I would say that whatever you do, make sure it's something you love. You should wake up every morning excited about your life. You only have one life to live, so I heard. And I think, for me, I want to continue to lift people up while I climb. I want that to be a part of my legacy. And I'm using social entrepreneurship to do that. And I hope you would decide to do that as well. Thank you so much.